Well, hello everybody and welcome to The Media Beat with Maureen and Claire, episode 98. And they have both been raging around Europe, missing weather, sitting on tarmac as storms raged above, to come here today to give you the very best in media news and thought. We're going to be talking about the ad industry today, Comcast, regulations in the UK, Fox, Spotify launching an exciting new product, Snap launching an exciting new product, and why on earth there are hydration breaks, however hot or cold it is, or wet or dry it is in the World Cup. Even I have an opinion on that, which I might have to keep to myself.
I thought you might, Oliver. I thought you might.
Given I'm strictly production. And as Maureen often says, you're not paid to have an opinion. She is quite nasty to me off air. Right, I'm joking, of course. They're both adorable colleagues. So we had better crack on. So we thought it was time to have another look at the ad industry. We talk about this quite a lot. I find it fascinating as it becomes more and more complex to sell product through the media that people consume. So it's high time that we had another look. Generally speaking, Maureen will look at the market and the business side. Generally speaking, Claire will look at content and creative. But there's, as usual, enormous overlap and hopefully discussion and maybe even disagreement. Who knows? But we'll start with Maureen. Maureen, can you start with a market overview and something of the business side of this fascinating subject?
Of course, Oliver, always. I love it when you separate the sort of business and content. Yeah. So Oliver, you may be wading through lots and lots of emails and newsletters, hearing about the consensus story around advertising, which apparently this year is supposed to be an epic blockbuster year. Okay, so the global ad spend is forecast to pass $1 trillion. I mean, we need to pause there. $1 trillion for the first time, helped by, of course, all the sports events. And I know you're eager to get to the FIFA World Cup discussion that Claire will kick off a bit later. So we've had, of course, the Winter Olympics, FIFA World Cup, we're still wading through, and of course, elections around dozens of markets. So, right, because I think the headline slightly misleads us here when we say blockbuster year, because I think the real question is not simply whether more money is entering advertising. The bigger question, I think, is where does that money go once it's in the system? And of course, the World Cup is a great example. So the World Advertising Research Centre, WARC, has the 2026 tournament injecting around $10.5 billion in the global ad market just in this quarter when the Football World Cup takes place. Right, so that sounds enormous, as we know, but once you adjust for inflation, it's only a very modest gain since Qatar. And still, that's below the level of 2018. So the sports year definitely is real. We know that the spending is real. We know that the attention is real. We know that. We listen to you, Oliver, and indeed Claire, rooting for France. But it's not necessarily creating, I think, a dramatically bigger pie. So I think it's all about deciding how you carve it up, and that is around distribution. And I think that's probably the structural shift here that's happening within the advertising industry. And I think it's much more interesting when we have a big event calendar like this year. So for years, we know, Claire and I have lived through this, television's basic promise to the advertisers, to the brands, is always reach. So you bought the big screen, the big match, the big national moment. That still matters, of course, as we know. But increasingly, advertisers are they kind of want television to behave a little bit more like digital. They want targeting, they want measurement, they want outcome pricing, they want data, and they want proof that a campaign did more than just appear on the front page of a large audience, or certainly in front of a large audience, irrespective of who the commentators are. And I'm pointing to Gary Lineker there. So that is why connected TV, in my view, has become the obvious winner in this new advertising marketplace and this new ecosystem, because it gives advertisers the cultural weight of television, but with more of the measurement logic of digital. So it's television rebuilt around performance expectations. Also retail media, which we've touched on. We may do I think a deeper dive on this at a later stage. I think it's an important one. I think they're also a winner because the retailers are no longer just selling products. They're selling media against purchase data. That makes them incredibly attractive to the advertisers because they still sit close to, probably the closest to the transaction. So you and I buy stuff. The closer you are to the checkout, the easier it is to claim credit for that sale. So when people say that 2026 is a huge year for advertising, I think the cleaner version is to say 2026 is a huge year for redistribution. So money's moving away from places where campaign attention is broad but hard to price, and instead it's going to places where attention can be measured, targeted, and connected to outcomes. And I think that's why the ad market can look strong but uncomfortable at the same time. So the money's still there, we know that, but the power is moving. So it's moving from linear schedules, as we know, to operating systems. It's moving from channels to platforms. It's moving from broad demographics to addressable audiences. And I think also from media plans to commerce data. And we'll pick up on that when we talk about Cannes in a minute as well. But I think it's not any longer about did people see it, it's did it move behavior. And I think that's putting pressure on absolutely everyone in the advertising value chain. So broadcasters need streaming reach, streamers need ad tools, retailers need media sales teams, and agencies need to defend their role in a world where platforms, retailers, and the AI tools claim they can get closer to the outcome than a traditional creative or media agency can. So if you see Cannes last week, oh my God, so AI was on every stage, but the conversation had moved on from whether to use it to how to use it. So I think everyone there, and including outside of Cannes, was talking about agentic, meaning AI does not just draft an idea or a campaign, but it plans and it carries out the task itself. Adobe used the opening day to announce a run of agentic AI partnerships, and OpenAI came armed with basically selling directly to advertisers. And no shame there whatsoever. The sharpest signal for me was when I heard about Alex Cooper, who was there with her own little agency. I shouldn't say little, but she was working with her own agency, no agency in the middle. Also separately, Gordon Ramsay was also there with his commerce success, having pushed Fox to launch a creator studio of his own. So you had Amazon, Fox, Netflix, all were courting creators, not to turn them into television stars, as Claire will tell us a bit about that a bit later, but to help them to earn more in the place that they're already dominating. So the role of traditional agencies in my books is really an open question of the week at Cannes last week. So as we know, sports year is a spectacle, but the real story is beneath it. So a really fascinating, new, evolving advertising ecosystem that, as I say, it hides behind this enormous number. There's so much going on that the $1 trillion is really sort of moving in different directions. It's not growing that large, but it's certainly moving in different directions. And I think this is a year about redistribution rather than about increasing the pie. But Claire, over to you.
I love that idea of redistribution rather than expansion. I think it's a really clean summary of what's going on. I wanted to take a slightly different approach, as I do sometimes, and talk about content. Cannes, as you say, Cannes Lions was last week, the Cannes Lions International Festival of Creativity. It's basically the Oscars of advertising. It was a week in Cannes where everybody and the dog descended on the croisette. I think it's even bigger than some of the big TV festivals there. And the CEO of the festival stood up on the main stage on the first day and told the whole industry that it was producing mediocrity at scale. So that was the tone given for the conference that is focused on advertising content. The other thing that I thought was quite interesting is that entries to the awards had fallen 25% this year. Why? Because the previous year, a number of entries were found to have used AI to fake results. And so this time they introduced new rules that were a bit more stringent, and the entry number fell dramatically. So let's talk about what's happening on the creative side of advertising. First of all, you've summarized it very well. The industry is not growing fast. It is growing, but slowly, and it's redistributing. What is getting smaller are the agencies. Not everybody in the agencies. The junior layer of the agencies is disappearing in a way that's actually a bit terrifying. 57% of agencies have slowed or stopped entry-level hiring. That's 60% of the market. So the way you used to get into the ad industry, which is start at the bottom, learn everything, work your way up, is closing fast. And that really, for me, is a big signal, a concerning signal for the future of that sector. Now, I want to be clear. The ads you see, I hope I'm not surprising anybody when I say that the ads that you see on Instagram, on Amazon, when you scroll through your phone at 11 p.m., these are made by AI, my friends. I'm sorry to tell you this. These are targeted, they're versions, they're generated at scale. 50% of consumer journeys, according to McKinsey, are already influenced by AI agents, AI search, large language models. That's happened. That's the norm. That's what I would call table stakes. It's kind of sad to some extent, but that's just, that market is gone and it's not coming back. And it's, as you said, Maureen, growing faster and faster. What I think is perhaps more interesting from a content perspective is one level up, is the sort of premium advertising, the kind of ads that, are supposed to make you feel something. The big brands, the luxury brands, the automotives, the alcohol brands. Now, these ones, this is where this idea that the hype peaked, I would say, about 18 months ago, and then results came in and they weren't as good as anybody thought, and people started thinking it's not so much, yes, we do need to use AI, but let's think about how we use AI in a smarter way. Again, Rory Sutherland, who is a well-known commentator on all things media, speaking at Cannes last week, said agencies are obsessed by scale. This is media agencies rather than creative agencies, which is a different type of agency in the world. Agencies are obsessed by scale, and nothing scales better than mediocrity. So all of these, AI slop scales incredibly fast, but it's all the same content. It's the same models, it's the same training data, it's the same visual grammar, and I think that was the sort of reckoning. So while there is still enormous pressure on production budgets, we've got 83% of senior marketing leaders saying they'd like to cut their budgets further. Very different position to be in a supposedly expanding market, to go back to Maureen's point. There's an understanding that, yes, we have to use AI, but how? So let's look at a few categories. Luxury is not really going anywhere with AI. They might use it, to tinker with things, but for luxury, the way the ad is made is part of what the brand is selling. They can't replace Jacob Elordi with an AI-generated actor. They have to have the big name director. They have to have the locations. They have to have whatever it costs. LVMH alone spends over 10 billion euros a year in advertising, and that's part of who they are. So that's not going anywhere. Cars and alcohol, slightly different. Alcohol has done a lot of experimentation. There was a vodka ad at the Super Bowl, which was entirely AI generated. It did terribly. So again, people were like, oh, okay, maybe we can't go all the way there. Cars are, I don't know if you think about the car ads that you've seen. For a premium car commercial, you need a location, you need stunt drivers, you need helicopters, you need closed roads. It might cost you for the shoot only, it might cost you $200,000 to $300,000. Then you have to version it, because every market has different regulations. Some weird markets have the steering wheel on the wrong side, so you need to shoot specifically for that. You're going into the millions of dollars very, very quickly. And I was talking to somebody from a premium automotive brand last week, and they were saying that they'd been experimenting in making realistic AI generated ads for cars that would cost £20,000 or rather than £1 million. And he said the cars look great, the people look a bit funny. So we're not quite there yet, and there's still work to be done. But if you're sitting in one of these big automotive marketing departments, you have to consider it. So you're absolutely right, Maureen. I think we are in that moment where We still need that senior human insight, and that's why the senior people at the creative agencies are not going anywhere. Again, that was a message from Cannes. Mark Pritchard, who's the chief brand officer at P&G, had a big session called "Robots Can't Build Brands," and his big example, which I have some issues with, was that apparently British people need to soak their dishes before washing them, unlike the US. And that's not something that AI could come up with. So you still needed a human. Now, I felt that was a slight push. I'm not sure that would be my main example, but it's true that there are human insights that can't be replicated by AI, and you still need the human in the system. Interestingly, and I think quite tellingly, Cannes this year gave its PR Grand Prix to KitKat. Now, have you heard about the KitKat campaign? Because it's a brilliant story, and I'm now going to tell it. In March 2026, 12 tons of KitKat bars were stolen in transit between Italy and Poland by thieves posing as police, which in itself is a story. Don't have to go into that. KitKat decided to take that and turn it into a marketing opportunity and launched a stolen KitKat tracker, and invited consumers to scan the barcodes of any bar they bought to find out if they were holding stolen KitKat goods. People became chocolate detectives, and the campaign reached 800 million people and generated £200 million in earned media in 10 days on zero media spend. And the PR jury at Cannes went like, well, this is exactly what we're talking about. This is what AI can't do. This is that very unique insight that you can do if you've got that type of brain. So now I'm going to finish this on Jean-Claude Van Damme. I did promise Maureen and Oliver that I was going to talk about Jean-Claude Van Damme because I think it shows the limits of what's going on in creative agencies. In 2013, there was a Volvo truck ad with Jean-Claude Van Damme to have any of you seen it? It's called the Epic Split. Yes, you've got two Volvo trucks reversing on an empty runway, and Jean-Claude Van Damme is sitting between those trucks and is doing the splits. And there's a song on top of it, which is Enya's Only Time. There was one take, there was no CGI. The ad cost $4 million to make and generated $170 million in revenues for Volvo. It has 120 million views on YouTube. That song re-entered the Billboard charts 13 years after it was released. And the ad worked because everybody believed that it had actually happened. And it did. It had happened. The problem is, if you made this ad today, everybody would think it's AI. They wouldn't even question it. They would look at it and go, oh, well, that's obviously AI. In fact, I think if you showed this ad today to somebody who had never seen it, they'd go like, well, this is obviously AI. And I think that's a really deeply strange place for an industry that is built on persuading people that what they say is true. When you get to this point where you can't trust anything that you say, I'm going to leave it there with that image of Jean-Claude during the splits.
I don't think we should even... We should just leave that cleanly.
Yeah, that's right.
Because that image is in my head, and I want it as long as possible. So I'm not even going to comment. I'm not even going to comment on that.
He had a sort of quizzical look on his face, didn't he? Like, oh, what just happened there? Yeah, that's funny. I wonder if this is going to be a place in history that we move through, and then it's that strange period in the mid 2120s where everyone just assumed everything was AI. Maureen, I love the way, by the way, you refer to the World Cup as the FIFA World Cup. How very correct. The rest of the world says
there might be others. Who knows?
Well, there is, of course, as you know, Claire, no doubt, the Ladies 2020 World Cup going on.
I'm very excited about that too.
It certainly is. England in the semis, I think. So that is great, tremendous stuff. Yeah, as usual, I learned a lot. Entertaining and informative. A little bit like the mandate of the BBC, I always think. I see ourselves as following in their footsteps in many ways. In fact, maybe the natural successor to the BBC. That was the deep dive, all about advertising. A wonderful start. And that means we move on to In the News. And lots of spin-offs, buys, regulation updates today. We start with Maureen Kerr at Comcast headquarters. She's had breakfast with some senior execs there. And she has the story of, it looks like quite a good, decent breakfast. She looked quite happy. And she has the story of Comcast spinning off NBCU and Sky. Over to you, Maureen.
Indeed. So earlier this week, there was a there was an announcement for all the analysts to come and huddle while they listen to Brian Roberts and his team at Comcast. And of course, I wasn't invited, Oliver. Sorry, so I had to just listen in. I had to listen in over the internet. So anyway, so earlier this week, so Comcast has decided that it's going to split its business into two. And effectively, it will be Comcast on one side and NBC Universal and Sky on the other side, with a host of other assets. And I'll touch on that in a minute. And it's rather interesting because the first thing I did was I jumped into the SEC filings and I took a look and I wanted to know, what is all this about, right? So the first question that was put to Brian Roberts, the CEO, was, hey, is this a step towards a sale of the two businesses? And his answer was two words: absolutely not. So I think Claire and I and Oliver, you and I, should just ignore that denial just for the time being, theoretically, because of course we've been talking for the last year and a half about Warner Brothers. And as we may all recall, that the first we heard about David Zaslav splitting his business into two was also a denial that said, we are not selling these businesses, we're just simply splitting them into two and they will operate on their own. So anyway, that line does tell you more when you hear what the NBC Universal Mike Cavanagh said. And he also said, look, the company has changed its mind about its business model. And Oliver, just for your sake, so Comcast has broadband, it has cable, it has systems, and it also has media, so content. And 15 years ago, Comcast decided strategically that the infrastructure and the pipe, as we call it, distribution, fits very neatly with media, and that the two are synergistic, and they spent a hell of a lot of money bringing all these businesses together so that media sat inside a pipe of distribution. So that's always been the case. So you've got a pipe that goes into the living room, the programming travels through it, and it sits on both side of the relationship. The viewer understands what it's getting, and the relationship is very strong because you've got distribution and you've also got content. That was 15 years ago. So if we fast forward this week, they effectively have said it doesn't work anymore, and we know why it doesn't work anymore, because streaming dissolved it. So effectively, if you can get television content over the internet, you no longer need all those cables and optic fibers that sit underground or even above us, because everyone is viewing content in a different way and they're doing it in streaming. So I just wanted to put that context together to say that this week everybody is now analysing whether or not Comcast spin-off strategically makes sense. Now, I think strategically, personally, I think it does make sense, because I don't think the distribution and media really fits together anymore. So that's fine. But I want to tackle this idea of, does it mean the two businesses are going to operate independently in the public markets? Now, they are all saying it is about the pure separation, and they will operate as two single businesses. And as I said at the top of this, Claire and I know, because we investigated what David Zaslav said, and ultimately it led to a sale of the business, of the whole business. Now, I personally think that, this isn't going to maybe be as straightforward as Warner Brothers, but it certainly does look like it's on a similar track. Now, the difference is this: NBC Universal doesn't necessarily come separated as well, because you've got on that side of the business, you'll have, let me have a reminder, Telemundo, NBC, you've got sports rights, you've got Sky, you've got theme parks, all being put into one company. So if indeed that whole company is going to be sold up at some point, say, for example, and Netflix may want to or choose to put itself forward to buy it, I don't think it wants to untangle, or disentangle, I should say, the theme parks, the sports rights, and the linear channels that sit within it. So anyway, the news is this: there will be two separate businesses. NBC Universal and Sky will be spun out into one, with Peacock and, as I say, the sports rights and some linear channels. And that will probably take about a year to do that. and then we'll need to see what direction they take. But both CEOs of those two businesses have said that this is not in preparation for an ultimate disposal. But my eye is on Warner Brothers is a precedent, and they all denied it. And guess what? Now it's being sold. Almost. It's not across the finish line yet.
It's not across yet.
Yeah. So complicated. Sorry, Claire. I don't know what you read into this.
But it's complicated. It definitely is complicated. I like my Lego analogy, but what came up with for me in this, I just remembered. Have you guys ever watched 30 Rock? In 30 Rock mocked the exact opposite of this, which was what happened in the 80s and 90s, which was this, I would say conglomerate premium, where it was good to put all sorts of industries together. I mean, you said that the pipes and content at least are vaguely related. At the time, Jack Donaghy, who was played incredibly well by Alec Baldwin on 30 Rock, his title was Vice President of East Coast Television and Microwave Oven Programming for General Electric. And the whole point of this, and the point of 30 Rock, was to say that actually it's all about corporate management is a universal skill. If I know how to manage microwaves, I also know about how to manage television. And so I bring, I'll create a premium by bringing this elite corporate. This is the whole Jack Welch theory of bringing these really, really good corporate managers into any business. And, it could be a television network, a light bulb factory, financial services, jet engine business. You just put it in their microwaves. And then, because you're diversified, you're insulated from industry downturns in your specific industry. That was the whole concept. That was all through the 80s and 90s. We went to business school and we learned that. That was the wisdom. We've moved completely the other way. And it is, yes, there's a logic to it. And yes, there have been technology development and streaming, etc. But it's also a cycle. And we've moved to the completely opposite end of the cycle, which is the pure play focus. And Wall Street is now, they absolutely want pure play. You've said it yourself, even now with the split, NBCU isn't really a pure play. It does have, various different businesses, but it's a purer play. And actually, I think Comcast becomes quite a pure play and probably will justify a much higher premium. So I just thought that was an interesting comparison, specifically because NBCU is obviously at the core of both of these things. And Comcast bought NBC from GE originally. So we're moving. Yes, that's what Wall Street wants. Wall Street wants pure play focus. The industry is responding in a logical way. It's not going to be as easy as everybody says. There's going to be more consolidation. Go back to the Legos. You're going to build some little red houses rather than building blue and red houses everywhere. Because scale will matter and margins are down, and you're going to need to find cost savings somewhere. But yes, I think Jack Donaghy wouldn't appreciate this. That's my conclusion to this news story.
Exactly, but I appreciate the timing of it because for about a year now, I looked at the share price and it was down 30%, 32%, something like that year on year. So it was up in the highs of $40 a share coming into 2025, and then 2026 is down to 22. So, you can see a third of that valuation just being wiped off, and everyone's referring to the fact that there is clearly diseconomies of scale of having these two types of businesses inside one organization, and that's the problem, So interesting. But when we talk about Roku in a minute, it's funny because then they're doing something else, but I think they're doing something a little bit different that is not just about scale. I think it's about reach.
Stay tuned. Yes. Stay tuned for our headline story. So, as usual, superb explanation and superb analysis as well. That was super. Thank you, Maureen and Claire. We'll stay with Claire now because she is one of the very few media commentators who can make UK regulation sound interesting, as we have our very occasional series, UK Regulation Update. So
come on, you're excited.
Yeah. I'll edge my seat.
This one in particular, we're definitely excited. We are.
It's the most exciting piece of UK regulation. Claire, over to you.
Yes, I'm going to talk about the planned UK ban on social media for under 16, which, as it stands, is scheduled for spring 27. So not quite yet, and has been announced but not implemented. And I think Maureen is going to talk a little bit about what happened in Australia, where a similar ban was put in place earlier this year. I want to talk about what impact it's going to have, not so much on user behaviors, because I have strong doubts, and I think Maureen's data is going to confirm that it will have any impact on whether young people access social media or not. But going back to our theme of the day on advertising. So some analysis indicates that banning under 16s from social media could wipe up to a 1.3 billion pounds from UK digital advertising expenditure. Because even though we think young people will still find ways to go on TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, and YouTube, advertisers will be prevented from targeting them on those platforms. And so that limits dramatically where advertisers can go to target under 16s, which was already quite limited. So what will happen is, well, it's what Maureen was saying. It's not about, it's not, in this case, it's not about stop spending money. It will be a reallocation. So it's going to be video on very good news for Netflix. Video on demand streaming is going to become much bigger for advertising. I'm sure they're delighted. Contextual advertising, anything that can be called the family-oriented television, but it's going to be very, very hard. And because it's very hard, the inventory is going to become much more limited. It's going to drive CPM, so the cost of advertising per 1,000 of people reached, significantly higher. So you can expect much higher CPMs to reach under 16s than it was before. In addition, what we've talked about creator economy, there's obviously a huge youth creator economy going on in all of these platforms, and they are monetizing through brands that essentially will die because they can't use brands, they can't target their audience, and so it'll be adult creators, but they won't be able to target under 16s. It's going to be a really interesting evolution of the advertising for under 16s, which already is a little bit in crisis because the traditional way of advertising to under 16 was, honestly, Milkshake and the Disney Channel. Those two avenues have closed down. It's already been quite difficult to reach them. Now this is going to disappear completely. And the risk as well is that brands will be targeting adults, which actually won't be adults. They'll be teens masquerading as adults to watch their content on other platforms. So while people are focusing on social media harm, and I'm not going to get into that debate here today, I think the real impact, the economic impact, the massive impact is going to be on advertising to, I'm going to say, 13 to 15 years old, which is a really critical audience to reach if you're wanting to create long-term relationships as brands with audiences that grow with you, which is what you're trying to achieve. So yeah, that's my view on the potential, because again, this is how it stands today, the potential ban of social media for under 16 in the UK. Was that interesting regulation?
Actually, yeah.
It was definitely interesting regulation. Yeah. No, it has a true business impact. No, it does. But I mean, we've been talking about this, Claire, haven't we? Britain is definitely following in the Australian sort of, lead that went out. I think it's very much a cautionary tale, I think, Australia. So the ban was in December of last year. So 6 months in, on the enforcement of this story, a study by the British Medical Journal found that around 85% of under 16s were still using social media 3 months in, mostly by declaring themselves, as you point out, older or passing a selfie check that the platform waved through. So the government's own figures is that this is Australian government, more than 5 million under 16 accounts were deactivated. So plenty of them came down, while plenty of them used other ways to get back on again. So the official response was that this is a leaky ban, was not to retreat. But I think Australia, all they're doing is saying, okay, we're going to double the maximum fine that we would impose on the platforms, because this has nothing to do with the users. It's effectively the platform's responsibilities. So they're basically handing the regulator more power to force the platforms to prove what they've done, but nothing's I mean, this is a cautionary tale. Nothing has really happened. Nothing has really changed. So for us, I think circumvention is going to be the real battle here, and I think the compliance pressures only ratchets that up. So I don't know. The regulators redrawing what the businesses can and cannot do may have an effect, but as we know, under 16s is just going to find other ways, as the BMJ proved, other ways to get back on again. So I'm not sure anyone's got a sort of true solution to this issue. No. So we're going to have a pincer move.
It's one of these things where it's clearly not in the. It's a bit like, remember, YouTube is, technically you can't go on YouTube already today if you're under 13 and on any of those platforms. Yet we know that everybody does it, and it's not really in their interest to enforce those limitations thoroughly. To be fair to them, it's also very, very difficult, in addition to the various things that you can do as a young person to get around whatever barrier is made. There are, the VPNs that you can get online that will make you look like you're browsing from somewhere else. A lot of times it comes down to the parents. That's what happened in Australia, that the practical enforcement has collapsed onto parents, and parents are like, we can't do anything. So it goes down to like limiting screen time on devices and sort of this, which is where we were before anyway. So it doesn't really, I have my doubts. I'm not saying there isn't a problem here, and I'm not saying that regulation isn't needed, but I think this sort of widespread, one-size-fits-all ban, although it has good announcement values, is going to be slightly less efficient, in my view.
Yeah, tricky one, isn't it? It's like letting the best be the enemy of perfection, or whatever it is. And I guess kids don't go on just for advertising content; they go on just to.
I will say one thing. I think what it does, what the Australian ban does and what the UK ban does, and I'm sure that's been one of the considerations, it does send a very strong signal to the platforms that they need to sort themselves out. And I think if more people do that, even knowing that it may not be very efficient, what these countries are doing is sending a strong regulatory signal to platforms who have behaved for a long time as if rules didn't apply to them. And from that perspective, I think it's useful, but the unintended consequences might be bigger than people have thought.
Yeah, indeed. Well, let's keep an eye on that one. Thank you, Claire. You've done it. Absolutely fascinating. So never judge a book by its cover. UK regulation updates can be made sexy. So let's look on that story. And finally, Maureen, you've, golly, I don't know how you've managed it, but you've got back to the HQ at Fox in, I don't know, America, probably. And they have had their wallet out. Maureen, what's the story? What has Fox been up to buying?
Yes, indeed. So Fox has got a big check, which was to the tune of $22 billion. I'm not going to bore you with the composition of that, but suffice to say it's a lot of money. And they're buying Roku. So Roku is a platform, an operating system. It's very difficult to find an analogy or a similar business here in Europe. So it's in the US, and it serves tens and tens and tens of millions of households. But effectively, it's a platform where you can look at content from all manner of sort of players. So it's a kind of a neutral platform to view content. But it's a streaming app. It's more than an app. It has the data relationships, the buying relationships with you, me, the viewers. So it's a kind of
it's sort of what the TV manufacturers have been trying to build in their OS and not quite succeeding.
Not quite succeeded yet. So so you can't point to a Sky, you can't point to a Tubi, you can't point to. So anyway, so Fox have decided to, which is a big number, 22 billion to buy Roku. But I think it's agreed on paper to buy Roku. So and effectively this will. This should go through probably by 2027, so next year. So we got a ways to go. But anyway, the simple version here is, though, that it is buying a streaming platform to some extent. I sort of say that's probably underselling it, because I think Fox is buying the screen. So as we know, Fox has Fox One, Fox has Linear, Fox has Tubi, and to stay within the sort of sports analogy here, it's got the World Cup. See, I didn't use FIFA. It's got the World Cup.
Which World Cup? Which World Cup's that?
It's the FIFA World Cup 2026. I rehearsed that. So it's got of course some fantastic sports rights and channels, either subscription based through Fox One or indeed through Tubi, free. Now it finishes that lovely little ecosystem of its own app, the platform of Roku. So as I say, it's got it's an operating system, it's an advertising layer, it's a home gateway basically for the screen. So it owns some really strong relationships now with its viewers. But something I've touched on, sorry to brag about my own sort of articles, but something I wrote on this week in Forbes article was it's a dichotomy here. It's a real dilemma here for, I think, Fox, because Roku is seen to be an independent, neutral platform for anyone's content. Yet the value that Roku brings to Fox is in itself tilting perhaps towards only surfacing its own content. And if it does that, it's going to probably devalue the entire acquisition. So Fox in itself has got to play a real smart game to show all of the current relationships and current customers that it still will favor their content over its own. But of course, as we know, it is going to do a superb job for Fox One, for Tubi, and for all the other Fox content by having that platform. But as I say, it's got to balance the neutrality with the synergistic values that comes with having your own streaming app. So an interesting one. It has been announced. It is a very expensive deal. It's going to close in 2027. But it's fascinating because this is all about reach rather than, in my view, scale. This is all about getting to an audience through a very, very sophisticated operating system and screen. Claire, I don't know what your view was when you saw Lachlan pull out his checkbook and spend an enormous amount of money.
Another Murdoch spending money.
Yeah.
I thought the two stories in the same week or 10 days was really interesting, the Comcast and Fox, because Comcast, we've got, a steady telecom utility selling a content business. In Fox, we have a content business buying a user interface and hardware. So in a way, a modern pipe. So you could argue that they are going in different directions. I think actually you're completely right. Fox is buying the direct relationship with the viewer. They're buying the user interface. They're buying data, and they're buying access. And I think it's a lot around live content, sports and news, less around library content. And it'll be really interesting to see what happens.
Yes, indeed. And that Forbes article, there's a Comcast one. I'm looking just on Forbes now and on the Roku deal. So you've written articles on both, Maureen.
I have indeed.
Yes. So I will direct you to Forbes, and you'll see in Maureen's write-up on Forbes that she doesn't mention the media beat. So yes,
I've got to be careful of cross promotion of myself or us.
Yes, no,
so, I do have to follow Forbes guidelines, not only in style but also in conflict of interest. Yes.
That's what I assumed. I have no such scruples myself. Yes, you are a trusted advisor on Forbes. I am not, but yes. Go on there if you want to read a more in-depth comment from Maureen. And that's it. And that therefore means that is the end of In the News. Meaning that this is the start of podmojis. And we've got some potentially juicy ones. I'm looking forward to some interesting props that you might have brought back from your travels around Europe, my colleagues. But let's see. Are they looking shifty?
I love Claire's look. Claire's searching around.
I'm literally searching around my desk.
Very special biro
we'll
pen
see where we get.
Brought back from Budapest.
I'm going to have to be creative. Might have to pull out the jumping car again.
Yeah.
I thought you were actually going to use that when you were talking about the AI. I thought you were going to start talking about it's good for automotives.
I missed an opportunity there.
You did. I was waiting for that.
Very, very strict scoring today. Right, let's go. Yes. We've got standards to keep. So, first up, and I'll start with Claire, Spotify launches Reserved by Spotify. So, what's that?
So Reserved by Spotify is a ticketing initiative, which means that an artist's most dedicated listeners on Spotify will be able to access concert tickets as a pre-sale. So this is Spotify quite, yes, exactly. So this is a partnership with Live Nation, and there'll be tickets that are set aside specifically for Spotify. And then Spotify will be analyzing your streaming history in various ways to identify the super fans, and then the super fans will be given an opportunity to buy these tickets on a pre-sale. So that's obviously Spotify moving into a wider relationship with the artist. It's trying to keep people on the platform longer, but it's going to have interesting consequences as well, I think, in the way that you listen to Spotify if you are indeed a Spotify user, because suddenly what you listen to and how you listen might define whether you become a super fan or not. So passive listening doesn't count, or counts very little. So if you're listening to a generic background playlist and it plays a Taylor Swift song, the system's not going to believe you're a real Taylor Swift super fan. It's going to look at whether you've saved the tracks or albums to your personal library. It's going to look at whether they appear in your custom playlist, and it's going to look as to whether you're sharing these to your network. So it'll be interesting to see whether people actually shift their behaviors to try and have access to these pre-sales. But, an interesting move by Spotify, who is obviously trying to expand their relationship both with the superfans, which, as we know, that's where the money is in music these days, and also with the artists. So I don't know. I'm going to go with I'm in a concert. I don't know. I have no idea. I don't think I'm going to win the podmojis.
That was sort of a bit of what we might call mum dancing, but it was still quite nice.
Mum dancing. I like it. That's me. I'm mum dancing. I completely embrace it.
I don't have any special things to hand over, so we might be neutral here. I'm going to take a more negative view on this, actually, because I think they went out of their way. They reportedly outbid Apple and Amazon for this, and it's also worth noting as well that it only covers Live Nation shows, and of course runs every ticket through Ticketmaster. So I mean, it's still very good, but I think Spotify has been looking at this specifically. They're not going to take any ticketing fee. This is effectively a loyalty program to stop Spotify premium churners. But what I find fascinating is that there probably are more super fans than there are seats at the concerts. So I think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to miss out. But as you rightly say, I think it probably will start to change people's listening behaviours. So it's interesting. It's a good move in that regard. I do agree with you from a business point of view. They have to do something, and I think a loyalty scheme that turns out that if you can retain your premium subscribers, there's no harm in that, for sure. But as I say, I think there's going to be a lot of disappointed people. So they're going to have to quickly get those tickets out there, and hopefully to the shows that people really want to go and have a look at. So I think it's more of a exclusive deal. Is it a multi-year exclusive deal? I think the beneficiary of this is very much Live Nation and Ticketmaster than it is Spotify.
Well, that's a good point. We should also say that it's limited to the US at the moment. But yes, and it's also a way for Live Nation and Ticketmaster to avoid the resale issues that they've had in the past.
Well, it'll mean no one is getting hold of my Spotify login, particularly members of my family, as I get offered tickets for all sorts of rubbish. Actually, no, my family have got quite good music taste, but even so. The scoop there is that the business is going to be the beneficiary, not necessarily the punter. How extraordinary.
Oh, no, or the artist.
Yeah, exactly.
Or the artist.
I suppose it might mean that you get proper fans at concerts, but even so, very good. I like the cynical side and the optimistic side. We are yin and yang. We are independent. We cover everything. Let's move on because we are running out of time. It's been a biggie this time. Snap launches Specs. It's not one of those things where you take photographs with your specs or it has a hearing aid built into the specs, is it, Maureen? Please tell us more.
Hearing aid. They probably can slot that in at a request.
They have those
at
now.
A request for them. So so you can pre-order Specs now, which is a standalone augmented reality glasses. But the price is staggering. I feel as if I've been talking about money today too much. So it's something like over $2,000, which I think is a lot, especially from a company that's already struggling to convince its own investors, that they're basically going to turn all these cultural relevant devices and apparatuses or apparati, I don't know the Latin for that, into profit. So I think this is, you can see what the strategy is. It's really clear. Snap has started to corner the market, especially around augmented reality. There's no one yet doing just AR standalone glasses. Meta's not even got everything sort of fully sorted out on its own spectacles. But I think at this price, it's going to be really too steep for a lot of people. But you know, who knows? Let's just monitor this. It split the market into two. So the developers were really excited, but the investors are really nervous because it's a hell of a lot of money, a big bet for these standalone. But you can see that Snap has got to try and do something, and it really does believe it's going to corner the lens behavior market. It does not want just to be an app on someone else's spectacles. It wants to own the glasses, it wants to own the lens, and it wants to own the audience. So I think this is a big bet that could pay off, but we need a year or two to sort of see whether or not that is the case, and the investors are probably not going to give them too much flexibility to do that. And so all I can do is
you've got a pair of specs. Yeah.
Is got a specs, but there's no hearing aid. They probably could put a hearing aid in there.
No, they have. They exist. These things exist. Yeah. That's
because it's
right. Okay.
On the bone, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's my podmoji.
Fair enough, Claire.
All right. Well, I'm going to have a similar podmoji, but mine is like doubtful.
Excellent.
Slightly concerned. Yeah, I mean, they are very expensive. You're completely right, though, that nothing like this exists in the market. So I think if you're a first adopter, and it's not $10,000, it's $2,500, which for geeks and early adopters is within the realms of possibility. So I think it's not impossible for Snap to hope for some sort of surge of interest from these early adopters. They are very uniquely placed. Nobody is doing exactly what they're doing. These aren't, the specs. It's not the Ray-Bans that take pictures. This is a full AR. You can basically ditch your computer and move your hands. The Minority Report style. This is slightly dated experience to make it look like to do whatever you need to do. So very unique product, priced accordingly. I think wait and see. I wouldn't buy it, but it doesn't mean that some people won't. They're also quite heavy. They're quite chunky, the glasses.
That's right.
So that's something to think about if you're going to wear them all day long.
I've got the nose for them, but I could probably...
It's a good start, Oliver.
I could have a small caravan on my nose and I wouldn't notice it. $2,000 for, I don't know. I'm cynical. It's a little bit like 3D TV was all the things about 10 years ago, and then everyone realised that...
Wasn't it?
Feels a bit like that. And they kept trying, and it was like, no, not really. Okay, good. We have to crack on with the last one, which is, of course, the FIFA... the FIFA mandated World Cup of Football.
World Cup,
2026 FIFA World Cup of Football in America, Mexico, and Canada. And these hydration/advertising breaks in the World Cup. What do we feel about those? Why do they happen? Are they good, bad, indifferent? Let's start with you, Claire.
Well, I think FIFA has maintained that the decision is rooted purely in player safety.
What a load of
but
cobblers.
You look at how it's happening, and it's less obvious for us in the UK for reasons I'll come to. But the way it's been implemented has, I'm going to say, heavily blurred the lines between athlete welfare and commercial opportunism. So basically, they become ad breaks. Obviously, we've watched some of the games on ITV and BBC. Well, BBC doesn't have ads, and ITV made the decision to cut to studio during those hydration breaks, instead of going to ads. But M6 in France, for instance, where we've watched some of the games, has gone very much the opposite way and has used that as an ad break. And indeed, most countries have done that for a 30-second spot in the final stages. In the US, you pay $750,000, so it's probably worth it, I would say. So clearly it's an advertising opportunity, but that's not all it's creating. There is a lot of pushback on the fact that it's really creating a 4 quarters game rather than a 2 halves game, because the coaches quite naturally are taking the opportunity to get their players in and change the strategy, which is something they couldn't do. You know, who could do this? American coaches in basketball. So, you know, there's this sort of general feeling that the Americans are turning football into basketball, or, you know, American football in a 4 quarters game, which it isn't. So I think internationally there's been, certainly from an audience perspective, there's been a lot of pushback because we like the fluid 90-minute game, and we don't really understand the concept of the 4 quarter sport. I will finish my podmoji by a quote from international man of wisdom, Kylian Mbappé. Kylian Mbappé was asked at a press conference what he thought of the hydration breaks, and he said, "You know what? If I'm winning the game, I don't like them. But if I'm losing the game, I quite like them. That's what I think about them."
Very wise. One of the great French philosophers,
I don't
Kylian
think
Mbappé.
anything more. I don't even think I need a podmoji after this pearl of wisdom, to be honest.
That was good.
Exactly.
Everyone says footballers are thick, but sometimes they come up with absolute beauts. You know, they think
Well,
it's just like the
I
rest
think you
of us.
could not be more, you know, right.
Yeah. Good for him. Maureen.
So I can't wait for after, is it July 19th? Which happens to be my birthday, so that's nice. So similarly, Claire, Fox is running commercials, of course, through the breaks, and then Telemundo has said it will not. So I'll be interested to see the viewers if they're switching, because I've heard anecdotally that viewers are switching to Telemundo, where they do maybe cut to commentary rather than suffer the commercials. But it'd be interesting to see those stats. I don't have anything else to. I don't have any pearl of wisdoms like Bappy.
I mean, it's kind of hard to follow Kylian.
It's hard to follow. So all I can say is it means the players are not going to suffer the sunshine, so they're not going to look.
Yeah, well, they're getting the hydration break even when it rains, so they're definitely not suffering.
Is that a lobster?
They're not going to
I see
the red. They're not.
Right.
Oh,
no! Well, no. Hang on, that's half a point.
It's
right
one
there.
from my
Good.
travels. You did ask one for the travels, but it just happens to be
that puts you in a very strong
from
position.
Harrods duty free.
That is good. That's good.
Yeah, that has put.
Please
you,
remember Kylian when you do the scoring, Oliver.
So Kylian scores high. The lobster scores high. It's going to be very difficult to add up. There's 2 times I've squealed in this World Cup. One was Mbappe's goal against it was Sweden, wasn't it? When they won?
Yeah.
And the others obviously was Harry Kane's second.
Yes,
against poor old DR Congo. That Mbappe goal and the Harry Kane goal, they're the ones for me. This World Cup, I've added up all the scores. You've got it's a draw this time, 0.5 points each. So thank heavens for Little Lobsters and Kylian Mbappe. A great round of podmojis. Viva la World Cup. Here's to a France-England final. Absolutely no chance Mexico are going to kill us. But we have to leave. And that is.
What's your prediction on the score? What's your prediction on the score versus
Mexico? I've actually got a prediction on the score. What, Mexico, England?
And England, yes.
I think Mexico are going to beat us 2-1, I think, and France are going to march on. And if France don't reach the final, it's going to be a bit of a travesty because they're playing the best football, probably.
It's football. Anything can happen. Anybody can
that's
win.
true. And often the favourite falls.
Yeah.
But Mbappe is one of those players
I'm
who just responds
not
to the pressure very well.
drinking the champagne yet.
Well, you've had.
But I am
Cups
putting it in the fridge, just in case.
Some champagne nowhere near our fridge. England have got no chance. France have got a great chance. And here's my podmoji. No, I haven't got one. Right, we must go. I've got the red cards, haven't I? But anyway, I can't find them. So here we go. That's the end of 98. A lovely one. We're slightly over. Who cares? It's the freeform way of.
Can I just say, 98, the year France won its first World Cup.
For the first time, yeah. And when was the second? When was the second time?
2018.
2018, 20 years later. They only had 20 years of hurt. Anyway, enough of the...
No, before that, before 1998, we had 60 years of hurt. Because we never won any before.
You'd won the Euros. You'd won the Euros in 80, I think. But I'll have to look that up. You won the Euro definitely once or twice. Platini won the Euro. Anyway, we must stop talking about the FIFA-sanctioned World Cup of 2026. Vive la France. Go England. See you next time. Say bye-bye, Claire.
Bye, Oliver. Bye, Maureen. Bye, everyone.
Ciao, Maureen.
Ciao, Oliver, Claire, everyone.
And we'll come back to the netball discussions, which is more your wheelhouse, in the next episode. But for then, and to everyone, bye-bye.